Hello and welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar as it is 1 p.m. Today we will be discussing cleaning up our database. My name is Jen and we are talking about version 20 today. Now just a reminder, we haven't released version 20 yet, so today's presentation we may encounter a bug or two, so don't be alarmed. That's why you haven't gotten the download yet. They are still working out some of the last few little kinks and getting it ready to go out to everyone as soon as possible. All right, so all of that being said, one final thing about the webinar itself. You will notice that your microphone is muted so we don't have too much background noise. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type those into the questions panel over on the webinar toolbar, and I will do my best to get to the questions in the course of the webinar, and if I don't get to them during the actual webinar, I'll come back to all the questions at the very end. So stick around and we'll get your questions answered. Do go ahead and keep the questions topical, and if you have questions about your specific database, give us a call. All right, so let us go ahead and dive right into membership. This is the portion of version 20 that has received the most attention. So if you haven't taken a peek at one of these version 20 webinars yet, you're going to notice this is very different. And so if you haven't seen version 20 yet, come and check out some of the other pre-recorded webinars on our website for more of the specific details. I'm going to go ahead and open up our people file here, and we're going to take a look at how we inactivate people when they leave the congregation. Now, if you have purchased our workbooks for version 20 and you want to follow along in the workbook, today's topic is going to cover Membership 102, pages 7 and 8. So if you're looking along, that's where you're going to find this information. All right. So if you have been using Church Windows in the past, if you're not a new user, you're going to notice that over here, instead of reason for termination, we've changed our vocabulary a little bit, and we're now calling it inactive instead of reason for termination. We think it's a little bit more clear for people, and we're hoping people will like that terminology better. Now, pardon me, when we're inactivating people, we have 3 components to the inactivation that need to be completed. You have, first of all, just this checkbox right here. So you can check and uncheck it. And that's how we indicate if someone is inactive. Next to that, we have the reason, the inactive reason, or formerly the reason for termination. Now, these are going to be the same reasons that you currently have. You can choose from those. You can add new ones using the plus minus dialog box, adding a new code and a description. Just one moment. And then, so once we pick a reason, for example, let's say that Miss Nina has left the area, we'll go ahead and choose that one. And then the last component is the date over here, and you can use the date picker, the drop-down calendar, or you can type a date. We'll just go ahead and stick with today's date for Nina. And then we can go ahead and click Save. It's telling me directory report order is required, but since I'm inactivating this person, I'm not going to add one. And those required fields are going to be a new feature as well. So we will also see that pop up. Now you can see over here on the family members list, her name has turned red. And if I, let's see. It's hard to see in this example, but if there are more people in the list, let me navigate forward. Yeah, here's one. So in this family, in the Arnolds, you can see only William is marked inactive. The rest of the family members, their names are in black, and so they are still here, part of our active database. Now, when we inactivate someone, they're not being deleted, and that is because when people have given donations, we don't want to delete them, or when we have historical data like attendance records, we don't want to delete that. So what we do instead is we inactivate people so that they are hidden from the active portion of the database. They don't show up on reports unless we specifically look for inactive people. Now, one other cool thing that version 20 has is this button up here, Make Family Inactive. Let me grab my highlighter so you can see where that is. Make Family Inactive. And this is great if the entire family has moved. You can go ahead and inactivate all of the family members in one fell swoop. And so if I click that button, you'll see it's going to pop up and ask what the reason is. We can say left area. It'll pop in today's date, but we can pick any date. And you can see if I hover over that question mark, it lets me know I can enter question marks as part of the date if I don't know. For example, they've got 10 question mark 2000. So we click OK, and now it says family inactive. And then up here it shows inactive, and down here it shows inactive. All right. So next thing I want to talk about is if we inactivate just one person. Let me see. Oh, and here's another warning message that is going to be helpful. So if you have 2 people with a directory report order of 1 for primary, it's going to let you know that, which is pretty cool because that's going to help us make sure our directories are correct. I'm not worried about that right now because this family is inactive, so I'm going to say no, I don't want to change that. But that's a pretty cool feature for active families. All right, so let's navigate a little further and let's find, here we go, Bill and Donna Bell. Let us say that Bill has passed away, but Donna is still going to come to the church. She's a widow now, and so we want to go ahead and change this record to reflect all of that. So what we'll do first is we will mark Bill. That's who we've got selected. We'll mark him inactive. We'll say he passed away. Let's just say it was last month, and we'll click Save. Now, we want to make sure that Donna is still getting everything now addressed to her and that her information is all correct. So the couple of different fields that you want to make sure you're changing when only one of the family members is being inactivated, for this example, in case of death, you want to change the mailing label. You want to change the directory report order, probably the family relation, although that one's less important, and then possibly the family photo. So the most important ones are going to be the mailing label. We don't want her to get mail now saying Mr. and Mrs. Since her husband has passed away. So we would just take out the Mr. and part, and now it says Mrs. And we'll just put her name in, Mrs. Donna Bell. Then we want to change wife to widowed or widower. And that just gives us that indication. It'll switch right here so that we know that as well. And then this one is the most important besides the mailing label, the directory report order. If we don't switch her to primary, she's going to get left off the directory. So remember that if a primary person in the family passes away or is inactivated for any reason, you got to go in and make sure that whoever used to be the secondary is now the primary, or they'll get lost from the directory. Then I'll click Save, and that's going to keep all of those changes. And I'm going to erase all my highlighting. And then again, you could use the photo tab to add a new family photo that would be just Mrs. Donna instead of her and Mr. Bell. All right. Robin is asking about the status code when you inactivate someone. No, Robin, the status code is not connected to the inactive field. The inactive field is just those three that are together there. You would have to also change the status code if you wanted to. Now, I will say that a lot of people like to leave the status code as active member even when they've inactivated someone so that you know what that person's status was when they passed away or left. So we can also change the family relation for Bill to deceased. And now if we look at his record, we can see that he was an active member, he's now deceased, he was included on the directory, and he was the primary, but now he is deceased. We've got that reason reason of inactivation of death, and the date and the check mark. All right, so that covers most of the basics of cleaning up our database through inactivation. Again, we've got this Make Family Inactive button, which is super helpful, and we can also inactivate all our individuals one by one. Now, as far as a find goes, the find screen is now just like the reports screens. So if we wanted to look for all our inactive people, just like we used to, we have to say include inactive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and leave a blank find to include my inactives, so I'm looking at everybody. And I'm going to click find. I have somebody asking about when we'll get version 20 out. Again, we don't give concrete release dates until we're absolutely certain it's ready to go out. We don't want to have to push it back and push it back. As soon as possible is the best answer I can give you. I'm sorry about that. Another question, if we keep on directory, is someone inactive still going to show up? Nope. Inactive automatically removes people from the directory. It's not possible for someone to be inactive and on the directory. All right, so here in the find grid, I'm going to come back. I'm getting a lot of questions coming in right now. I'm going to come back to those at the end, so I ask you for a little bit of patience on that. We're going to take a look at this find grid real quick so we can see how inactives work in here as well. If I come into columns and sorting, I'm going to clear out a bunch of these fields that I don't need. I do want to keep the inactive. Clear these out. All right, and then we'll grab my other inactive fields. Okay, that gives me all my inactive fields. I'm going to move them all so they're together. All right, so here we are in the grid. And in the grid, we are now seeing, if I scroll over, we have a column for inactive family. Now this is not something that's checkable here, that's why it's grayed out. But if there is a check, then we know that that whole family is inactive. Then we can see our inactive reason and our inactive individual. Now with the inactive individual column, you can see the background is white. That means it is checkable. So if I click on that, it's going to let me check the box. I have to double click to get it to check so that we don't accidentally check it by single clicking. Then it asks me to pick a reason and pick a date. And when I click OK, it puts in that reason for me, and it puts in the date, though I didn't put that column on here, that's okay. And now I would be able to change the reason if I wanted to. We can't do a reason without checking the box first. Joanna, all of the changes made in membership automatically happen in donations as well. That's always connected. right, so it looks like I've already answered quite a few of these questions. David, I'm not sure what number you mean about deleting and using again. If you mean the giver number, absolutely. If you mean the numbers automatically assigned by the software, those numbers stay with the family. And Patricia, the only reason you would ever delete members is if they have never done anything that you want to keep historical data on. If they've never had attendance, never given, anything like that, you could delete them. But if they've ever given, you will not be allowed to delete them. You can only inactivate them. All right, I believe that pretty much covers everything. We can see how we can search for inactive people through Find. We've seen how we can use Find in the grid here to work with our inactive reasons and checkboxes. If I wanted to do a new find, I could look at only my inactives by choosing inactive reason and select all. And I have my inactive checkbox. And this would be how I would find only the inactive folks. And then again, back on, if I close my find, back on our individual records, we've got the names showing up in red for easy differentiation. In the people lookup, they're in red, and in the family members list, they're in red. All right, if there are any other questions, go ahead and get those typed in. If they are something that it seems like everybody needs to know for this presentation, I'll answer them out loud. Otherwise, I will just go through and type out the individual answers to the individual questions. Thank you again, everyone, for stopping by this afternoon or morning if you're out west. And check out our website for the recorded webinars, and thank you again for sticking with me today. Go ahead and sign out if you don't have any other questions. Thanks.